Okay, how's my hair? Good? Right. That water fountain out there always took an eye out. Yeah, gotta watch out. Thanks to Julie for having me, and thanks to all of you guys for coming, and I hope you find this interesting and informative. And I'm going to try and focus mostly on talking about what I do for managing my business, the business end of being an artist for hire, so to speak, and as well as self-promotion, which is really key. Especially nowadays, the marketplace is really crowded, and with the affordability of new technology, people can claim to be a quote-unquote designer simply by owning a computer and having Photoshop and some knowledge of it, and that really confuses things for the client. Most people who are looking for design services or illustration services have a hard time distinguishing the real talent from just the masses. So we'll talk about how to distinguish yourselves from the rest of the gang. But first, I want to just really quickly give you a broad overview of who I am and what I do. So I'm going to just go through a couple of slides here that I prepared and talk a little bit about my philosophy, which is the same philosophy Milton Glaser has about art. And do you guys know who Milton Glaser is? And hands up if anybody's heard his name. Great, great. Legendary designer, and he has a similar approach to work that I do, which is to solve problems with an illustrative approach. He's an illustrator, and he likes to draw, and he solves design problems through drawing. And that's what I've done with my whole career. Other people have other focuses, like type, where they're just kind of trying to solve problems typographically. Other people are more photographically inspired, and they use photography to solve problems. I do it through drawing. So, Art is Work. That's a book that he wrote about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Highly recommend checking it out if you can find it in the library or if you can find it on Amazon or somewhere else. It's a big, fat book, and it is an incredible book because what he does is he takes a whole bunch of projects that he's very well known for having completed, such as the I Love New York logo. We've all seen that. And he breaks down the process by which he came about with his design solution. So it's fascinating. You get to see original pencil sketches, things that nobody else has ever seen, and I really highly recommend checking it out. So I'm just going to quickly go through some logos I did recently, just to give you a broad overview of the kind of work I do. I do a lot of logo design and corporate identity, and this was the logo they actually wound up going with. I think it's pretty obvious a solution, but I'll show you where I was hoping they would go. And it was about growth of the students from K through 12. And this is kind of more the kind of way I would like to solve problems with drawing. And I wanted to tell you about the realities of what happens when you're working in the world of design and you have to deal with a client who has a specific vision. You have a specific vision. You try to marry something together from both of you that really comes out nicely. And I'm not saying that I was disappointed in the final logo. I think we all were pretty happy with this. But sometimes you have to take a vision that you have, and if it doesn't work out, you have to just move on and not take it personally. And I know that when you're a student and you're working on stuff, it's really hard not to kind of have a personal attachment to your work. But the one thing I really want to slam home is if any of you are interested in getting into the world of commercial art, don't forget the word commercial. It's a business. So be proud of your work and be excited about it. And if it doesn't work out and the client doesn't like what you do, move on, push forward, and hold on to what you did, and you might be able to use it again later. I'm just going to recycle this down the road someday, I'm sure, for some other client in some other way, and maybe it'll get printed. I was talking about type. Every now and again, I do get somebody come up to me and they want a purely typographic logo. I'm going to tell you straight up, I don't think I'm good with type. I think I'm terrible. I think it's my biggest weakness. But I had to know enough about type to try and come up with marks that make good use of good typography. So when I was out of school, and I had not had any training in type in school, I was a fine art major doing painting. So I picked up every book I could find on typography and just the fundamental basics of type. And thanks to that, I was able to understand enough about it that I could do 4 different solutions for this client. This one they wound up actually going with. And it's enough now. And this also helped me with QVC. You guys know QVC, right? QVC was losing a lot of their market share to the Home Shopping Network because I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the Home Shopping Network rebranded itself as the cool online or TV shopping channel. Not so sure that really works out. It's kind of an oxymoron, but anyway. So QVC said, oh, we're really losing market share. We want to be cool too. So I got a really great opportunity to work on some QVC logos. And they gave me these funky colors. They said, we want this sort of fuchsia pink and this blue, and just do whatever you want. So here are some of the ideas I came up with. This one I thought might work out. Let me know if I'm going too fast. This one was kind of boring, I thought. And this one I thought was great because it's a Q and it's a TV and all these things. And I thought it'd be a really simple little icon. But one of the clients at QVC said, that looks like a fish. And after that, it was over. And then this one I thought for sure they would go for. Got all three letters, you got the TV, and you got a happy face. And at the end of the day, there were 3 of the clients on board, and one said that it felt like a children's television network. And as soon as they said that, again, down goes the ship. So like I said before, you can be proud of your work, but if one person doesn't like it and they're paying you money, you just got to roll with it. All right, so one more logo I want to talk about, and this is really more typically how I solve problems is through illustration. There's a really cool gym out in Myrtle Beach called Striking Beauties, and it's a kickboxing gym for women. And has anybody heard of it? It's actually going to be, really? Okay, it's going to start becoming, I think, rolled out nationally. They might already have a few more. But so I started working on the logo, and the client direction was they wanted something having to do with tattoo look, a look of a tattoo, and a look of a vintage pinup piece of art. So the first one on the left kind of satisfies that criteria. This one on the right, I just was trying to do my own kind of thing with it. And then here are a couple more. This one I was really going straight down the tattoo and pinup art route. These are just sketches, by the way. This is what I send to a client for first round of approval. They give me an idea, I send them a sketch. I tend to sketch pretty tight, though, because I don't want them to think that something really rough is the best of what I'm capable of doing. Sometimes clients are very literal about what they see, and if you send them a loose sketch, they think, oh my God, this thing looks really loose and terrible. Why do we hire this person? So you have to kind of, tread carefully with that. And then this one was actually what they wound up going with. And at the end of the day, they thought that the punching bag wasn't really working. So we turned it into a ribbon. And by doing so, we actually had room to describe what the gym is all about. So that kind of works out better. I'm showing you the black and white version. There are 4 different color variations, but they wanted to have it in black and white so they could reproduce it as a temporary tattoo. Really cool idea for new members. When you come in, they give you these temporary tattoos you can rub off. All right, so moving on. Sometimes I get to work on animation. Anybody here interested in animation? Or, okay, what kind of, are you talking about like Pixar or that kind of stuff, or any kind of animation? How about you? Flash, okay, cool. I'll talk about that a little bit. I use Flash for this. Now this is not a finished animation piece, but does everybody know what an animatic is? When you're working in television advertising, when they want to have an idea for an ad, say for instance at the Super Bowl. Do you guys watch the Super Bowl? Everyone watch the commercials? Okay, yeah, that's pretty much why I watch it, but it was actually a good game this year. So just pick any ad you've ever seen on TV. I'm trying to think of the Super Bowl ads now, and they're all didn't really do that great this year. Well, let's say an ad with the Budweiser horses, trotting down, and there was a dog or something running along, or a cow, right? Okay, well, it's really expensive to go out with a video camera, coordinate a whole bunch of stuff with horses and cows, and try and make them do what you want, right? So what you do is you hire an illustrator. Well, first you hire an agency, an advertising agency, and say, hey, here's our idea. The agency says, okay, fine. They hire an illustrator. The illustrator draws storyboards. You guys know what storyboards are? Okay. Storyboards then go to a next step, if they're approved, which is an animatic. An animatic is an animated storyboard. Okay, it's not that sophisticated, but it's enough to kind of give you an idea of how the commercial might look, with some movement, with some sound, and some voiceover. So I did an animatic, of all things, a few months ago, and they're trying to rebrand themselves, get a little more funky, a little cooler, because their client has been aging with the brand. And the younger women, I would say, 18 to 25 years old, they do not consider the ultimate push-up bra, they go straight to Victoria's Secret because Victoria's Secret markets to that demographic. So they want to take over some of that market share, but they feel like their brand's a little too old. So they wanted to have this funky spy girl who's in New York City. And so the first thing I do whenever I work on an animatic or some kind of simple animation is I give myself a color palette. I don't know how you guys work, but I really highly recommend if you're going to work in color, give yourself a palette first and keep it simple. The reason being that it's so easy with the stupid computers to get lost in this world of whatever it is, 16 million, or how is it, 32 million colors? It's too many. And when you have that little, that palette picker on Photoshop and you're just wandering around with your mouse, you know, through 600,000 reds, and it's way too much. Simplify your palettes and it'll simplify your life and it'll make your final artwork look a lot better. So the first thing I do is a black and white storyboard of this woman. She's walking towards us through a crowd of people. These are really rough because I've worked with this client before. They know it's going to be okay in the end. She's jumping over fire hydrants and things like that. And every time she does something with some action, you see the bra, okay? So, you know, she's swinging over a manhole. And by the way, this kind of stuff, you know, I'll draw a panel like this in about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and just to keep it simple. And then here's where I get more detail. Once the basic storyboard's approved, I start to do character development. Now, people who are interested in animation know a little bit about that. Very important step in the process is to get yourself familiar with whoever you're going to be working with, the character, so that you can draw him or her again and again and again, know the proportions, know how the fabric moves. So I have, you know, our main character here. This is her evening gown for later on, but most of the time she's walking around with her trench coat, got a forward view, and then I've got one of her friends who shows up later. Here's my cab. These are all the components I use in the animation. Then I do set design. So I do a huge background painting that I can scroll through when I'm actually doing the animation. Again, sticking with the same color palette I initially outlined, it keeps my life so much more simple. I know that if I only have 3 or 4 real colors and then values of those colors, I can compose something quickly without having to be too concerned about a million color variations. What I do most of my work with these days is magazines and newspapers, okay? And that just happened naturally. I was drawing and drawing and drawing, and my design work started to kind of fall by the wayside. And I still do logos, and I do a lot of design work, but compared to the illustration work, it's nowhere near the volume. Editorial illustration is a really interesting business to get into. How many of you are interested in drawing or illustration as a career? 1, 2. Oh, lots of people. Okay, great. Well, my major in school was painting, and to be a painting major at UNCG, you have to take a lot of really traditional fine art courses, which means you're drawing from the figure constantly, painting from the figure. So I can say from my own experience, if you know how to draw the human form really, really well, inside and out, you can draw anything on earth. That's A number 1. So just draw people. Don't worry about anything else. Get people down. And I mean really get them down. Study anatomy from the inside out. Go pick up a book on human anatomy. I know it sounds like a lot of work to do, and like maybe it's overkill, but I promise you it's not. Because when you understand what's going on under the skin, you draw so much better. And that helps me with the process in editorial illustration, because my deadlines sometimes are somebody will call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. They want final illustration by Friday morning. That's a really quick turnaround, especially for a full color piece, and if it gets complex, you know. This was a case where I got a Wednesday call. It was due Friday morning, so that's not so bad. The story was about rappers in Jamaica who are, the lyrics they're spitting are actually real threats, and then after a rap battle, they'll go out and hurt each other, which is not cool. So I was trying to come up with a way to show, okay, there's some menace, you know, the shark's teeth, that's one idea. Then I had the idea of the mic being a knife. And then just a really straightforward, you know, you can see that they're angry, or they're trying to do something interesting with the camera angle. But, you know, by the way, I was talking about drawing people. So if you understand anatomy and perspective and all that kind of stuff, you can put together a sketch like this without any reference for, you know, in a couple minutes. And that's going to help you in that business. So those of you who are interested in illustration, you need to get to that level of fluency. And you have to be comfortable enough with the body that you can, in your head, rotate the figure and compose what you want without having to do an exhaustive amount of research. Because it will slow you down, and you really got to be familiar with what you want to draw. So for instance, a head at this angle is not really the easiest thing usually to draw, but if you've done enough of them a million times, it's no big deal. So then this is the sketch they wound up going with. And sometimes, I don't always do this, sometimes I'll really knock in the areas that I want to stay black, the solid blacks. And here it really helped me with the final. And here's the final. Moving on, and here's a close-up. I don't know if you can see some of the texture in there, but I do apply some paper textures, even though I work digitally, because I want it to feel like it's not digital. I don't like stuff to feel too slick. This is Anne Hathaway and Meryl Streep. This was for the fall issue for movie previews, Doubt, and what was the one Clooney was in with the Farrelly brothers? I don't remember. And The Road, which was, I think, just stopped playing. That was, what's his face? Is that guy's name? Viggo Mortensen? That was the most fun one to draw, actually. Likeness is something that'll get you really far if you are interested in doing editorial illustration. They're constantly wanting portraits of people, because to get a photograph of an actor or a celebrity, they have to pay a lot of rights for the use of the photography. So if they can hire an artist to draw a picture that really is exactly what they want, it's a much better solution. So I encourage you to work on likeness work if you're interested in illustration. It's also good exercise for observation. Here's a detail you can see. I mean, this kind of stuff that I spend a lot of time enjoying and doing with my drawings doesn't show up in print. Because it's, it prints this big. But that's just for my own gratification. And the reason I mention that is I want you guys to, even if you're doing something for a client and you're feeling kind of like, this isn't the best thing I've ever done, make it something really good and enjoy yourself, because, if you're drawing pictures for a living, it could be a lot worse. This was a really tricky one, and I just want to talk about the importance of conceptual thinking. And I don't know how many projects you guys have had to work on with a concept. It's a really broad term, but basically conceptual illustration just means you're telling a story, or you're communicating an idea more than just a literal representation of whatever it is you're supposed to be drawing. In this situation, it was a really tricky story where they were talking about renting versus buying, but neither one was favored in the article. It was just a totally even thing. It was like a list on one side, renting, buying, and super boring. So to make it more interesting, I actually sat down with my wife at the table, and I was like, what are we going to do? And I started thinking about animals. So let's write down animals that are slow and that aren't that mobile, and let's write animals that are totally mobile and can move about whenever they want. So the obvious solutions were like turtles and snails for the former, and then birds, and we came up with other fast animals. And eventually I had this idea of birds representing the renters and snails representing the homeowners, and then just instead of them having the shells, having the actual homes or the mortgages on their backs, and the birds being able to jump around and rent wherever they want. And thankfully, the editor was happy with that idea. So, and then really quick, I want to go over some posters. Have you guys done poster design? Any assignments for posters here? Posters are one of my favorite things in the world to do, because you got type and illustration or an image, and you try and just make them all mesh into something great. And it's a really fun challenge. I would say posters are actually my favorite thing to do. This one's for Little Shop of Horrors. I don't know if you guys all know that play. It's also a movie with Steve Martin. It's about a man-eating plant. So the fun thing here for me was just doing the lettering. I like to do lettering by hand if I can. I'm not a big fan of setting type just because I'm not good at it, as I said before. Here's a detail. This stuff took forever, but it was really fun. Here we go. This is one for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Do you guys know what cystic fibrosis is? It's a terrible condition. And every year I do this poster pro bono. And I'm not going to talk at length about pro bono work, but if you are going to do anything for free, make sure it's something you really care about and that's going to be, it's worth your time. As an artist of any sort, when you get out of school, or probably now, you have friends all the time coming up to you saying, hey, you're an artist, can you draw this for me? Thanks. Okay. Thank you. You know, your time is really valuable. Your talent is really valuable. They're asking you to do it because they can't do it themselves, right? So make money or make an exchange, barter. Do what you can to support the idea of artists being valuable resources in our economy. It's really a problem right now because with the internet and with theft of images, you have almost no control over that. People are going to copy and paste your stuff left and right. And it's devaluing what it is that we do and the time that we put into what we do. So be really selective with the work you do for free. I do this poster every year because a friend of mine has a daughter with cystic fibrosis. It's totally something that's close to my heart, so I do it for free. Here's some stuff I did for a brewery in Winston-Salem. My favorite client of all time. They were so wonderful. They were just like, do whatever you want. That never happens. So I got to do a great series of pieces for all of their beers. And the only reason I include this in the presentation is to talk about the importance of doing when you're doing a series, to have it be consistent and instantly recognizable as part of that series. With branding, you have to be really consistent because the marketplace is so flooded with brands. It's like, why does Nike work so well? Because it's just that swoosh, and it's, you know, the way they brand themselves is so totally consistent. If you watch the first 10 seconds of any Nike brand commercial, not a specific product, but just Nike brand, you know it's a Nike commercial before you get to the swoosh. Now, how do they do that? It's because there's music choices involved, a certain kind of photography, a certain kind of mood about how inspirational it is to watch everyday people doing amazing athletic achievements or the professional athletes. Whatever it is they've done it in a way that you know it's Nike. These images have to feel like part of a family. The type treatment has to feel like part of a family. Here's some more. This is the first one we did. Anyway, so I'm going to close with some advice before I talk about the business side of stuff. No matter what you want to do, if you want to be a designer, a photographer, if you're going to be interested in visual communication, draw every day. I know that sounds like, well, I don't have time, you know, but instead of playing Tetris for 5 minutes when you're waiting online in the bank, have a moleskin. You guys see those little sketchbooks? They're really nice little bound sketchbooks. Just pull it out and draw the teller, you know. Draw from observation, draw every day. Even if it's just 5 minutes, draw every day. Engage in other creative activities. This really helps me, and it helps every other person I know who does this kind of stuff for a living. Yeah, music, drama, photography, writing, dance, any kind of creative activity is going to influence how you work in your main discipline. Without a doubt, I guarantee it. I write songs. I don't sing very well, but I write songs, and I play them just for myself. And sometimes if I'm doing that, there's something that goes on in my brain that makes me have an idea for whatever assignment I'm supposed to be working on. It's just what you're doing is you're engaging a certain part of your brain that has maybe been lying dormant for a while, and it comes to life, and you're more creative. I promise you it works. Read about art and design every week. This is really critical because if you're not caught up with what's going on and with trends and with the names of people who are out there working in the business right now, it's hard to have an intelligent conversation about it with another designer. It's hard to do the kind of work for yourself that you know is not just derivative of somebody else's work. It's hard to be inspired because you're not seeing what's going on out there. You can't just look at what's right in front of you. You've got to go find stuff that's out there that's inspiring and interesting. I'll talk more about these publications in the second part of this. Find out who has made it. Okay, that's important. And then find out how they made it. That's the most important thing. When I first started out as an illustrator, I didn't really know exactly what I was supposed to do to get clients, magazines and books and so on. And I just started picking up the phone and calling working illustrators. And I can tell you, I'm a nice guy, I promise. You can call me. But everyone else I've ever talked to on the phone, they're totally fine with talking for a few minutes. As long as you are really respectful of their time and just kind of brief with and to the point with your questions, it's fine. So find out how people are working and how they made it, and then take cues from them. Be aware of your competition. Strive to be better. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. But more specifically, your competition, you can actually see it in printed form if you're interested. There's a magazine called CMYK. You guys know this magazine? Yeah, you know that. And when you look at it, it's intimidating. I mean, I look at it and I think, uh-oh, I'm already working, but these kids are going to take all my jobs. Because, yeah, CMYK is the best magazine to look at if you want a good kick in the pants to make you feel like I have got to really get up to this level. It's the best student work from the country. It comes out quarterly. Really wonderful magazine to look at. Keep a sketchbook journal. I kind of talked about that already. Remember to use it. On the journal side, I think one thing that's just as useful as drawing is writing, and writing by hand. I don't know how you guys feel about typing. I type all day long. But anything I type, it just kind of, I don't remember it. But if I write something by hand, it just sticks in a different place in my brain for some reason. So if you have any ideas for a project or something you're trying to think through for something personal, write it down. It'll go away otherwise. And finally, do something that other people are not doing. That'll set you apart. An example of that would be that ridiculous video I made. Nobody was rapping about design, so that seemed like the obvious thing for me to do. Let your personality and your passions guide your work. That's really important. I started out as a web designer. I hate web design. But after school, I needed a job, and I knew it was design related, so I did it. I did it for 4 years, and by the 4th year, I was at my wit's end. I wasn't drawing a lot, and I wasn't really doing what I wanted. And luckily, I got fired, and then I got hired as a graphic designer at Shapiro Walker Design in Winston, and that's when things really took off, and I got excited about design, and I realized halfway through working as a designer that I wanted to be drawing more. I just wanted to draw every day, and that's when I started looking at how to freelance and become a working illustrator. And all of that stuff came from, I think, just letting what excites me kind of drive where I took my career. And it's easier said than done, but if you do that, you'll be a happy person, and your work will never really feel like work. It'll just feel like, you're the best thing you can do. So I wake up every day now, and I'm happy to do what I do, and I don't feel like I'm slogging to work. I gotta sit down and do this. It's fun, and at the end of the day, it's hard to tear me away from what I'm doing.